Haunted architecture and shifting perceptions, the notion of home in post-conflict Syrian cities, Aleppo, Idlib, and Raqqa. What defines our home and makes it ours is the memories attached to the places we used. It is also about the rituals we usually share and celebrate with family. It is the practices that take place within our own spaces at home. How would we look at our home if these events that define it were replaced by the traumatic events of war? How would we look at it if it was used by others? What is the level of acceptance and attachment to it after it was haunted by their smell and voices? And finally, to what extent the change of our emotional ownership would eventually change our cities? In response, our study addresses the psychological factor that might impede the decision to return, and to investigate how to measure that change in personal perception of displaced population, and on a larger scale, how to measure any demographic, social, morphological impacts, and then to predict the ways in which the urban dynamics could be altered. The research context is the Syrian war, which has resulted in the destruction of over 3 million residences. Around 30 million people, half of the country's pre-war population, were displaced, whether internally or externally. Our focus is on the cities of Aleppo, Idlib, and Raqqa in particular. Why these three cities? Basically, the three cities are major cities in northern Syria, registered the highest rates of destruction and displacement since the beginning of the war. And they feature communities of different ideologies and political views, and have witnessed different scenarios of conflict and displacement. Accordingly, combining these cases helps to objectively assess the notion of home away from political pluralization. In order to understand the shift in perceptions aftermath displacement, we conducted an online survey to ensure a random and diverse sample. The research will continue to investigate using semi-structured interviews later. The survey intended to be inclusive to all ages, genders, cultural backgrounds, Syrian communities inside and outside Syria, all types of ownership, housing typologies, and all reasons and causes of displacement. The survey excluded those who did not leave their homes during the conflict, and those whose houses were not located in the selected cities. To evaluate the effectiveness of the survey, we've done a one-week trial which was closed at 43 responses, and the final survey closed at 162 responses. Of all respondents, about 39% were living in Aleppo, and 38.6% in Idlib, and 17.6% in Raqqa. We asked a set of questions that go around the experience of before and after leaving home. All responses are then categorized depending on its relevance to or influence on our debate. First category helped understand the typology parameters, the demographics of respondents, their ages, gender, number of family members, which housing typology most affected, what locations of the city they fled from, and the voice of which group, of which generation is recorded. And as we can see, it's about 65% for those with the age 20 to 30. Moving to attachment, on a scale from 1 to 10, the level of attachment to the original home before and after displacement is captured. Also, the level of attachment to the neighborhood is collected. This helps for the strength of the attachment and make a comparison to check when this attachment dropped or got stronger. And the third category, time, this factor helped refer to both the amount of time the person has spent at their home and the time they spent away from it. It's also captured the check-in frequency on the original home. Use and status categories. So other important collected factors related to the war context are the level of physical damages happened to the housing units, and this being captured on a scale of from good condition to a completely destroyed homes. Also, this category helped figure out if the respondents are having other people occupying or using their homes willfully or forcefully. Regarding perceptions, how the displaced people perceived their original homes before and after incident, the incident of displacement is collected as well. The respondents reported whether the original home is seen as a place full of pleasant memories, only place that they consider as home, and what is the most missed aspect after displacement on the scale of everything to nothing. On the other hand, they also had the space to report if the house is being perceived as unsuitable for living anymore, as a place full of painful memories, or what is the most lost aspect after displacement on a scale of everything to nothing as well. Moving to the last category, return, the respondents reported their hopes and ideas about returning to their original home, if it's possible or not, if they wish that or not, if it's exciting idea or not, rejecting or accepting the idea in general. And if there is any plan around the original home, return to it or abandoning it. This also helped assessing any potential new start inside or outside Syria. And all these decision-making reflections are evaluated with regard to respondents' current location inside or outside Syria. Reviewing and evaluating the collected data, some correlations appear between three main themes: attachment, memory, and the decision to return. And based on this distilled theme and the sub-themes, we can start the discussion. First point of discussion, the fact of disconnection, denying the incidents. The interpreted data shows that when people leave their homes during conflict, regardless of any reason, what happened because and after the incident of displacement is ignored. All respondents acknowledge that they left their homes. This confirms the occurrence of disconnection with the original home as a fact. Disconnection physically happens. However, the respondents blur this fact. What proves this is the belonging to what is prior to this incident of disconnection, while rendering what is after as less important. This is projected through their sound reflection on the image of their home before conflict. More than 2/3 of the responses respondents described it as safe and pleasant place, empowering the pre-war image to the level of not considering what happened after the moment of disconnection can be seen as a traumatic response. Checking and assessing the validity of this reflection, we can see danger forced by others and distractions are the main three methods used to implement that disconnection, yet they are normalized or put aside when reflecting on the home before the displacement. Discussion to a strong attachment to home as architectural context or non-architectural context. The importance of home as an architectural entity can fluctuate depending on what component of the home the respondents are attached to. The level of attachment to the original home before leaving it was visibly strong, about 60%. This strong relation is particularly assigned to all components of the house and the context around it, with about 42% of the responses. However, the strength of this relationship is more related to family members than the everyday rituals that took place. Conceptualizing this attachment in the context of architecture and the severe destruction can question the importance of the built environment as a tangible frame to fit all those components in. In addition, the level of attachment turned out to be more into humans than their own practices, which leads to another reading of the notion of home when it is not occupied by the loved ones. In this case, the architectural dimension drops. This can also translate in the possibility to lessen the importance of architectural space and to deepen the disconnection to it if all the family members could potentially establish the lost rituals and practices again somewhere. The importance of the original house could be then assigned to a new architectural space. The third point of discussion, time, pain, release, let it go. So the interpreted data shows strong ties with the original house. Ties can be seen as a two-sided tool in evaluating the relationship with the original home. Time is a factor that reinforces the relationship with the original home and makes it less changeable. More than half of the respondents, 52%, had lived at their original homes for 15 years or more. This can suggest a definite return with the presence of a magnetic connection, yet this potent linkage is seen as a source of painful feelings. This can be read through the data of the missed and lost components of the home following the displacement. When most of the inhabitants express missing and losing everything after leaving their home, the home then has become an emotional burden, bringing continuous disturbing feelings when recalling it. We can also see a correlation between the longer the period away from home with the fader the relation gets. Even if the relation is fluctuating up and, or down, as long as the disconnection is lasting, it weakens eventually. Interrogating this two-sided relation again, we notice that despite the pain and long time of displacement, the level of attachment does not necessarily drop. For instance, during the first 5 years of displacement, the attachment for individuals amplified. Again, as long as the disconnection is lasting, it weakens eventually, even on the scale of individuals. Home is haunted. First, we need to clarify that before the war, the majority of houses in Syria were occupied by their owners only. It is common to inherit the house and to pass it to the next generation. This means that the notion of home is both related to history and memory, and accordingly, displacement is seen as a tough disruptive of continuity in the Syrian context. However, back to the data, that dominant image of home illustrated by the sound level of attachment and pleasant memories can be perceived as a stimulating factor that generates a strong desire to return. But This image changes drastically in the case when the home is used and enjoyed by others, about 42%. Home stops being home when shared. This was evident in the answers of those who define their homes are not theirs anymore or as a mere meaningless place. What can possibly make this reflection less emotional is the long-term disconnection. Almost all the cases of those who deem their homes to become meaningless have been away from it between 5 to 10 years. A virtual intention to return is a lie. Regarding attachment, the majority of the respondents, about 42%, are still attached to their home even after displacement, while regarding memories, 76% still visualize their home as a place full of beautiful memories. To understand any correlation between the desire and action, these percentages are projected on the possibility to return. 31% of the respondents wish to return to the original home, and 89% kept checking on their houses regularly. Paradoxically, they expressed their desire for a new beginning and a new home away from the original and outside Syria. This means that while their home is still valuable to them and that there is a strong intention to return, the expressed intentions contradict the actions in place. Putting these contradicting feelings under the umbrella of traumatic influence, excessive checking can relate to anxiety, especially when the high rate of cases of excessive and radically frequent checking is about 45% and are far not correlated with any desire to return. Furthermore, only 14% confirm that they already returned to their original homes. Return is false intention. Reflecting on all the discussed points on the level of cities, the overlapping of the change, false attachment, the traumatic memories, the use of the houses by the others, the high percentage of destruction, all lead to major shifts in perceptions toward what used to be home. It consequently suggests filling the voids left by others or keeping them the way they are. Ultimately, a considerable change in the syntax of the three cities is happening, reflecting the first the mentioned points of discussion on the scale of the cities, with more than 50% of respondents who left their houses located in the city center. We can suggest the three scenarios. So the first scenario, if the displaced settled outside the center, this can suggest higher density outside the city center, dialogue between the city center and its surrounding areas, more green spaces filling the voids, and could lead to a new city structure. And moving to the scenario 2, if the displaced settled outside the city but inside Syria, this might suggest moderate changes, new city centers, sub-centers, neighborhoods, new local identity, and more diversified communities. And finally, with the third scenario, if the displaced settled outside Syria, this will bring critical changes, new communities would emerge, and new identity and collective memories. To conclude, the study acknowledged the psychological impacts of trauma, which add another layer of complexity on the decision of return, the disconnection that took place, the suppression of the memory of displacement, the refusal to acknowledge that changes in the pre-war image of the home, and the numbing and the voidness of memory triggers are all indicators of severe trauma. The study speculated several scenarios of a change in the social and demographic aspect of the 3 case studies. However, further analysis would focus on each city individually and provide further context-specific readings. We hope that shedding the light on the psychological factor would have positive impacts on decision-making and return process by addressing the psychological and psychosocial phenomena. Thank you.